welcome to the second edition of Sustainability100 Plus platform brought to you by ABN Bev and Network 18. As we begin the journey this year, we continue to highlight success stories and also appreciate the mechanisms used by governments, civil society, and industrial establishments and NGOs in some of the key states of the countries. The states that have focused their efforts on achieving inclusive growth, keeping the SDGs as the main framework. Today, we shine the spotlight on the state of Haryana.
Good evening and welcome to the season 2 of Sustainability 100 Plus. Today we kickstart the first state summit with a focus on Haryana, a state that has recently seen a rise in the national SDG ranking through smart agricultural initiatives and prudent water management. It is my honor and privilege to introduce you with an inspiring lineup of eminent leaders and key stakeholders. We have a keynote from Honorable Deputy Chief Minister of Haryana, Shri Dushyant Chautala, followed by a fireside chat with industry stalwart Shri R.C. Bhargava, who is the chairman of Maruti Suzuki, and followed by a panel discussion with industry leaders and a master class which is run by our in-house agro expert. Haryana holds a very strong focus for ABNWF India, and we have a long-standing relationship with the state. We have our brewery, Haryana Breweries Limited, located in Sonipat, which is one of our oldest breweries and caters to almost the whole of North India. Budweiser, which is one of our fastest growing premium brands in the country, is brewed in Haryana Breweries Limited. We work very closely with farmers across the state to procure barley that we use to brew our beers, and we have been working with them for a very long time, especially around good agricultural practices and techniques and digitization. We are also water neutral in Haryana. We have also introduced a women economic empowerment program for rural communities, which is focused on upskilling, financial and digital inclusion, and promotion of entrepreneurship. We aim to empower over 500 women within a year in the district of Sonipat. We have also recently held 2 mega health camps for nearby communities in Sonipat in association with HSRLM and with the Chief Medical Officer of Sonipat. With these camps, we have reached out to more than 10 villages with a population of 36,000 covered, and more than 1,400 community members have benefited from these medical camps. So we look forward to a very interesting summit.
I'm joined by Mr. Dushyant Singh Chautala, Deputy Chief Minister of Haryana. Welcome to the show, Mr. Dushyant. It's great to have you here with us.
Thank you.
So we're discussing Haryana's SDG tracker, measuring progress and laying the roadmap based on early lessons. So my first question to you is, Haryana has been ranked as the fastest growing state in the Niti Aayog Sustainable Development Goal Index 2020-2021. So if you could take us through the concentrated efforts that have been taken in the last couple of years and also some of your early lessons while balancing growth and sustainability.
We have been doing pretty well, and the proactive measures the state has taken, especially when it came to Swachh Bharat and going ODF free. Haryana was one of the first states to get ODF++. When it came to infrastructure development, we were the fastest growing state when it came to overall infrastructure, either in terms of roads, in terms of providing water to every household, having schools at every level, having medical colleges. And I think during COVID also, we took that risk to put thrust on our infrastructure as well as our health services. And I think we succeeded in that. We have about 14,000 ponds around the state, and Haryana has put extensive measures. We are going to spend about 1,000 crores onto excavation and cleaning of those ponds. Whereas it comes to drinking water, we already have water connectivity to each and every village of the state, which is provided by our public health department. In the urban areas also, we have made sure that we have the capacity for cleaning of water, as well as that water is provided to every household with the guidelines which the center gives, that in urban areas we give 140 liters per person and in rural areas is 70 liters per person. And I think that is one step in the northern region of the country. Haryana was first and foremost to take. And I think that has been a success story for the country also, where the Prime Minister has also appreciated Haryana for providing under Jal Shakti, providing clean water to every household.
So if you could take us through the kind of efforts that you had to take on ground in convincing farmers to take more sustainable practices.
See, it was a tough step, but yes, we have been successful. Last year, when we said "Meri Pani Mera Virasat" and diverted people from moving from paddy to other crops, we saw 1 lakh hectares of land which was converted, and we had to give incentives to farmers, and we paid 5,000 rupees per farmer per acre for conversion. But yes, we are successful. People have moved to oil seeds, people have moved to other crops. And the result is that Haryana is one state which gives MSP on all 13 uh, crops.
So, could you tell us a little bit about the steps that you had to take to make sustainability a part of the school culture?
I had requested the Prime Minister by writing a letter to him to introduce it at college level. But after the new education policy, which has come up, I think it is going to be an agenda for every university and college to come up. There is a requirement in future. We will not step back. We have created a foreign corporation department with this vision that there is more coordination and more development with ideas coming in from all across the world.
So, let's tune into a fireside chat on 4 decades of industrial partnership, balancing growth and inclusive development in Haryana. It's time now for a conversation with Mr. R.C. Bhargav, Chairman Maruti Suzuki, and Sonal Bhutra.
Hello and welcome to the Sustainability 100 Plus platform. Today, we are focusing on the state of Haryana and how communities, government, and corporates they are coming together to further improve upon the state's SDG, that is Sustainability Development Goal Index. We will be evaluating the success story of Maruti in Haryana as they complete 4 decades of partnership now. We are joined by someone who's been instrumental in scaling up Maruti's operation in India and specifically Haryana. Without much ado, I would like to welcome Mr. R.C. Bhargava, who's the chairman of Maruti Suzuki. Mr. Bhargav, it is a pleasure having you with us on this show. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you. Nice being here.
So, my first question, of course, is the fact that Haryana is completing 4 decades of partnership with Japan, and Maruti is slated to establish its third manufacturing facility in Haryana as well. How has the experience been so far? How have you seen the state's approach change towards balancing industrial growth and also sustainable and inclusive development?
We have obviously had a very good run in Haryana. We started production in December 83 and reached full production at the Gurgaon plant. Then we bought, and with the support of Haryana government, we got more land in Manesar. Then we built by in steps 3 production lines in Haryana, so that in Manesar. So Manesar can now produce about 800,000 cars a year. Having completely exhausted the limits of capacity building in the state, we now look for the third site. And again, we sought the cooperation and help of the state government. And with their support, we have been able to buy about 900 acres of land in Kharkhoda, where we will establish further manufacturing capacities, which could go up to 1 million if the market sustains that kind of demand.
What role do organizations like Maruti they will play in ensuring that the agriculture ecosystem benefits from these developments as well?
The increase in the incomes of people living of agriculture cannot really happen unless employment opportunities for people in the villages arise outside the villages. One of the great benefits of setting up big companies which create a lot of employment downstream is that it provides a huge number of opportunities for people from villages to find employment outside the agricultural sector. So what has happened as a result of Maruti and the other auto companies that have come into Haryana is that the pressure on land has decreased. The people there have found other very paying opportunities to work, and agricultural incomes have started going up. That is, I think, the major effect of industrialization on agriculture.
So, Mr. Bhargav, any specific policy push from the government that you think is exciting? Is hydrogen a sector or a segment which you think will be the next growth trigger for the company, for the country, or you think EV adoption will take precedence? That is something we should start looking at first before we look at hydrogen.
Well, at the moment, EV is being given greater priority over hydrogen. Hydrogen development requires a lot more of, I think, R&D work and development work and infrastructure building before it can become a viable source of energy. On the other hand, the advantages of hydrogen is that unlike the EV sector, we will not be dependent on raw materials which are all imported. And we will not be dependent. Ultimately, raw materials are all finite. Whereas if you go for hydrogen, the raw material is virtually infinite. And therefore, if I look at it purely in theoretical terms, I would say the long-term answer for the global situation is hydrogen. But how long and how much time and effort and resources would be required to develop hydrogen is something which I'm not really fully aware of. And maybe for practical reasons, EVs will come earlier.
Hmm. But of course, a lot of developments happening in both the places. Mr. Bhargav, thank you so much, sir, for joining us today and giving us your time and discussing something which is indispensable and has become a part of overall economy as well as more sectors as well. Thanks a lot for joining us, sir, today.
Thank you.
It's time now for a quick break, but see you on the other side. Welcome back to the Sustainability 100 Plus presented by AB and Web. And today we shine the spotlight on the state of Haryana. So up next is a panel discussion on agriculture industry, empowerment, strengthening the three pillars for economic growth.
Welcome to this interesting panel discussion that looks at three key pillars that we are looking at: agriculture, industries, and empowerment. And to discuss this, we have with us eminent panelists, Dr. Vibha Dhawan, who's the DG for TERI. We have Mr. Siraj Chaudhary, uh, who heads the National Commodities and Management Services. Then we have Mr. Ramnath Vaidyanathan, who heads environmental sustainability at Godrej. And finally, we have Mr. Madhavan, who's the Chief Executive for WaterAid. Talk to us a little bit uh, about agriculture and how agriculture has become so important, and we need to increase productivity of agriculture, crop resilience.
Food security is a very important issue for all the nations. And India had covered a long journey ever since we got independence. India is not doing great. We have to go cover long miles before we can say that we are able to give safe and nutritious food to our population. In terms of population, we are still growing. And also, let's look at our natural resources, which are finite. Water, especially because the water table in most states is going down, and almost 80% of the fresh water is used for agriculture. So, therefore, it is extremely important to save this fresh water as much as possible and to some extent look at match species plants, what crop should be grown in what area so that they don't become water deficient in years to come.
Now, like to ask Siraj, since he also looks at commodity management and food security in some sense is linked to that, and would like to have his thoughts as well.
Responding to the same question, I think the concern on food security is very valid. However, what I would like to add is it's the choices that we make within the ambit of food security. I mean, India's problem, and I'm saying we do produce enough. So at least the basic cereals, I think India is in a unique position relative to a lot of other countries in the world who are either surplus or deficit. I mean, India has a much lower trade flow relative to some of the similar size economies because we are essentially consuming most of what we're producing. This year was a unique opportunity where the world needed, thanks to Russia-Ukraine war, the world needed cereals, which India was in a position to supply. And a country like India, and for the size of our population, we did a great job by being able to supply free grain to a large population during the pandemic, and which was a sustainer.
Now, like Mr. Madhavan, to really talk us through some of the issues around water that you see in this field, and you obviously would be trying to help out agriculture with these things. So how would you look at this situation?
Almost three-fourths of the drinking water requirements in rural India are met by groundwater. Now we're seeing that of this groundwater, agriculture tends to be, for agriculture, water used for irrigation is the largest consumer of this groundwater. So in some sense, if water used by agriculture does not change and it continues to be as inefficient as it is, we run the risk of not being able to provide for drinking water for our families for times to come. Water availability in every household in India by 2024. What Jal Jeevan Mission does or seeks to do is essentially to make what is normal for you and me the norm for everyone else in this country. So I think our big challenge for us is how do we try and balance these competing interests? The fact that water is critical and is being used, particularly groundwater is used excessively for irrigation, and the fact that this has an impact on drinking water availability now and potentially in the future.
And I will bring in Ram here from Godrej. You all have been celebrating 10 years of sustainability at Godrej. And I would like to learn from you about how can companies meet the challenges of the net zero. I mean, it's a significant challenge that all the companies are facing. And you're probably the best person to answer this.
I think a lot of it stems from taking the first step, I would say. I think we realize that, sometimes we often wait for the perfect solution rather than getting a move on. So, one of the things I like to tell my team as well, and this is an ethos that we face sustainability across Godrej, is do not let perfect be the enemy of good. So, when we started off, there's always this, this fear that we won't be able to meet the targets or we won't be able to meet the goals. And net zero as a concept often seems very daunting to many companies. So they start worrying about how they want to get there to that actual zero mark. But I would argue that even getting to 80% of the net zero ambition for any company is a very, very big impact overall on the ecosystem. So, in worrying about getting to the final goal, we must not lose track of the kind of impact that we can have by making some sort of improvements in terms of our emissions.
Now it is time for an interesting masterclass on Farming 101. And this masterclass will be led by Mr. Inesh Singh, Associate Director, Sustainability and Agro, AB InBev India. So let's dive in.
Hello and welcome to the Season 2 of Sustainability 100 Plus Masterclass series. What are the most important considerations if someone wants to start their own farm?
That's a really good question, Sugandha. So when someone thinks about starting their own farm, I think the number one consideration is the location. Where is the farm going to be located? Is it going to be the state of Rajasthan, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra? Because basis the location, it will lead to a lot more decisions being finalized in terms of the type of crop that you're going to sow and the weather that you're going to get. So the location becomes a very, very important factor when thinking about starting your own farm. Then once the location is finalized, the second thing that a farmer needs to ascertain is what is the type of crop that they'll be growing. Is it going to be a cash crop? Is it going to be a food crop? Is it going to be something related to horticulture? And once the location is finalized, it's very important to understand the climate, what farmers have been doing in that region historically, what are the trends in terms of farming in the region, and basis this analysis, you arrive at the type of crop.
Moving on, what is the innovation sector there in agro? Like, how is it performing and what kind of support system exists for the first-time farmers?
The innovation sector in agro in India is booming. You will find startups offering probably every service there is to be offered at a farm level, from crop advisories to machinery, to crop tracking, to satellite monitoring, to estimating yields. The ecosystem has really boomed. However, I think the drawbacks over there are, especially for small and medium scale farmers, they don't really get efficiencies in implementing these technologies. If implemented on a large scale, definitely they give you a rate of return. But if you're implementing it in a small scale, then you really have to think about how much money you are investing versus the kind of benefits you are able to drive. So there is that balance that needs to happen. However, for farmers, I think the good news is that every single aspect of farming that we talked about right now is enabled by technology. So in a nutshell, I think the innovation sector is doing really good. However, there are still some improvements to be made for all the innovations to become mainstream.
Thank you so much, Dinesh. I think that's it for our viewers today.
So, hope you benefited from those sustainable practices that were shared in the masterclass. And that's it from all of us here. Thank you all for watching.